We're the Young Indie Chroniclers podcast, and we're producing a new feature-length documentary, George Lucas, The Lost Golden Age.
George Lucas was going to do this Lawrence of Arabia scale epic on a 16-millimeter budget.
You got a chance to have the same adventure making the show as what Indy was doing.
His stuff is really quite political.
You didn't think I was going to run, did you?
I learned that when George says he wants to ultimately change or fix something, that he was going to do it.
We built a Kickstarter campaign to support the film. Late pledges are available now at Kickstarter.com.
Hello there. Welcome to Force Ghost Conversations. This podcast is your home for cozy deep dives into all things Star Wars and Lucasfilm adjacent properties. This is your host, Anthony King, and each week I will be joined by fans, creators, and believers in the principles from the galaxy far, far away to discuss the thematical elements from our favorite Lucasfilm properties. And without further ado, it is time to gather around the campfire for some Force Ghost Conversations. You know, folks, sometimes when you record a podcast, you think, hey, I'm going to at least get a couple days out of this thing here. And I think maybe, what did we get, 3 out of this one, Greg? The one from last Sunday about the Super Bowl spot for the Mandalorian and Grogu, because, of course, I feel like we somewhat manifested that a new trailer would come out eventually. And maybe sooner than later. And we can talk about the timing of all this thing, because I'm sure that plays into this here. But we are here today to officially talk about the quote-unquote official trailer for the Mandalorian and Grogu film, which is coming in theaters this May. And because we talked about the Super Bowl spot a couple days ago, we had to bring Greg McLaughlin from the Rebel Base Card podcast back on the show to get his thoughts on the actual trailer. So, Greg, welcome back to Force Ghost Conversations, and how you doing?
Thank you for inviting me back on so quickly. But what I can say is that the exact same thing happened, right? Because it just happened to us. We were talking about, I think we were doing our, like, what are we expecting for 2026? And then all of a sudden, I think the Maul Shadow Lord stuff came out as well. And then the Super Bowl commercial that we talked about last week. And so you go, wow, I was really hoping for more than like 3-4 days out of this. But, true listeners to Force Ghosts and Rebel
They've
Base
already
Card
listened already. Yeah, that's right.
They've listened already, and they can go back. And so we are definitely on record of how our feelings are. And, in kind of like having a chance to listen to everybody else talk about it, I think a lot of folks were in the same boat. Like, there was a little bit of confusion. There was sort of the later, like, oh, okay, this makes sense. And you know what? This trailer was 2 minutes and 12 seconds, and they only paid, how long was the Super Bowl spot?
It had to be at least 30 seconds.
So they saved a ton of money and generated, it makes sense. And we'll get to that in a minute. But it was fun to kind of see this, you hear it. And then, of course, when I dove in this morning, wow, what a trailer.
Well, before we get into the actual specifics of the trailer itself, I think the timing is the first place I want to go with this conversation here, right? And this is obviously, we are not in the halls of Lucasfilm or Disney. I don't really know who's in control of when things are released and whatnot. But having the Super Bowl trailer spot, less than a week and a half roughly ago now, and then the release of this, do you think they always intended to release the trailer today, or was it because of confusion from the Star Wars fandom surrounding the Super Bowl spot that they bumped up a release for this, perhaps?
That's interesting, because now, having looked back, I think at the time, because they didn't say, hey, we're going to put a commercial or this or that. We were kind of expecting it because of the law. So I think, we talked about it, like, after we saw, the Budweiser homage, I kind of figured a trailer was going to come. And I think I was very surprised that it wasn't. However, now looking back at it, you can say that the commercial put the thought in a lot of folks' minds, and it was right there in front of them. Nobody had to go anywhere or click any link or something like that. And then, hardcore nerds like us, how did you find out about it? Do you go daily to StarWars.com? No, it's like somebody you knew said, "Hey, look, there's a trailer." And I'm
Yep.
like, so word of mouth, that's how I learned.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden I was like, all right. And I started to go out and I put it on the TV, although I put I got the link. I think we got the link for the Twitter one. And then I went like, all right, I'm going to go back and watch the YouTube one. So, it's like you get the buzz of that. Everybody is going to be talking about it.
Hmm.
And then that kind of primed us for it. And so I guess rather than waiting through you know, listen to the last episode for the complete Super Bowl breakdown. Sorry it went so long, but it was an exciting game. But certainly we were ready, and like when you have an audience go click a link, that's content they want to go see, and they're gonna go over. Our show is gonna be short in comparison.
Yep.
Even when Greg and I talk about it on Breakfast Back, I think we're gonna do one next week. It's still not, there's so much to talk about, but it's like, wow, this was really, I think it's almost like they were preparing us to go, it's coming.
Yep.
Get your, and so I didn't want to look at it, first thing on a mobile device. I wanted to see it on the big screen and then kind of go from there. So I think they got the best of both worlds, and I certainly didn't have to pay for all the extra time when half the people, yes, you're going to get the numbers, but is everybody going to be really paying attention? And then you kind of blown your wad. And so in this case, save that money and then use it somewhere else. Make some cool swag to give away.
That's right. That's right. You can do all that. Go do a toy fair the following week, and then release some of the merchandise, or at least give hints towards that. And maybe this was part of some grand marketing plan. And I want to get into that because I have some thoughts about this here. So, obviously you got to look at these trailers largely play in front of movies, right? And you got to look, all right, what's coming up on the release schedule that's going to get a lot of eyes, right? If it's not the Super Bowl, it's going to be at the place where people are actually going to see this thing, which is in the movie theaters. So we're getting into that early summer season, which now starts in March, seemingly, right? And I'm looking at February 27th, 28th with Scream 7, I think at this point. It's coming out in theaters.
Tokyo Drift, yeah.
Yeah, Scream 7, we're doing it again. And that's coming out, and then of course Disney's new Pixar, I don't know if it's Pixar or just Disney Animation, but Hoppers, the new film, is coming out the following weekend. And the Disney brand synergy, right? They want to release their big guns, especially for the summertime, with those films because they're going to get people of the Disney brand and like-mindedness watching that. It's a family-friendly film, so they're going to hit all those audiences here over the next couple of weeks here, potentially with some big releases and putting this trailer in front of it. And so I think the timing works. So it's a fair question to ask, right? Because they had all that in the last week and a half with all the podcasts talking about it, the online chatter and whatnot about the Super Bowl spot, Jon Favreau having to come out and do interviews and talk about it, and I think Disney marketing and Lucasfilm marketing folks being like, all right, this was our plan and all and that stuff. But honestly, now that I've seen this trailer, Greg, I think the Super Bowl spot was a genius bit of marketing, and I'm going to explain that here because looking at this trailer, it is just you are overwhelmed with random side characters and no-named, nobodies and fun, weird aliens in this thing. Like, it is a canon junkie's dream to watch this trailer here. And it is so full of Easter eggs and whatnot that the average person that's just tuning in for the Super Bowl would have been just like, what? I feel so out of it. This isn't even Star Wars to me. I'm not going to see that movie. So for them to say, all right, we're going to put money in front of this, we're going to put money on the Super Bowl here. We're going to put a 30-second spot out there, and we're going to get the most amount of eyes on front of it here with people that may not even have Disney Plus accounts anymore, people that don't have the 4K sets, people that don't watch a lick of Star Wars outside of a few things here and there, but they've seen the Baby Yoda merchandise, they've seen the Mandalorian armor, they've seen the kids at Halloween with all this stuff here. They got the gist. They saw, hey, these two characters are going to be in a movie. Haha, funny Budweiser spoof thing. Yay. They hit the majority audience there and gave them what they needed to know in the quickest way possible. looking at the other things too. Minions did the same thing. They just had like a quick 15-second spot of a minion being like, hey, we have a movie coming out this summer. Toy Story did the same thing of Woody just being like, all right, I'm here. See me in theaters this summer. And that's exactly pretty much what they did with The Mandalorian and Grogu here, because we live in such an age now where people are like, everything's homework. I don't like having to watch 3 seasons of a TV show in order to feel like I know what the conversation is, even though that's the history of everything. But people just feel so overwhelmed by that concept nowadays for some reason. And if they would have released this trailer, or at least like a 30-second spot, just overwhelming us in our senses with like huts and Embo and these wacky creatures and an Anzelin voiced by Martin Scorsese, that would have just blown over people's heads and would have alienated perhaps the audience that they were going for, or at least that wide 4-quadrant audience that they need for this film to be successful. So in hindsight, folks, if you do listen to our episode from a couple days ago, we did get to a point where we were fine with it. But now, after seeing the final product, I'm like, that was genius, brilliant. Kudos to everybody. Claps all around. Do you have any thoughts on that, Greg, now that I've done my soapbox?
No, and once again, had I been paying Anthony by the hour for my therapy session, this would have ran into money. So on the one hand, I think everybody in Lucasfilm, including myself, saved a ton of money. But I think you're right. I think like they knew the audience. In this case, it was an audience that wanted to see something, that was expecting to see some commercials, but didn't necessarily have to go through and process a bunch of stuff. As a matter of fact,
they didn't have to see 3 huts and go, I thought there was just Jabba and I saw him die in 1983.
Exactly. But, I think that also all those spots together during the Super Bowl compete with all the other spots. And so,
Yes.
for years I've always gone to, used to be like the USA Today ad meter after the Super Bowl, and you'd see what those spot, like how close was your favorite spot to what
Nationally
really was
yeah.
Exactly. And so in which case, I think it would have been forgotten very quickly. And I think, like I said, you would have had a very large audience that maybe would have all really seen it, got through it, or really thought it was like, oh, okay, in the conversation with. And so really this week they had the audience that cares about this all to themselves, with content that you can measure, because you can see the YouTube clicks. And I was trying to see if I could get it on the Apple TV on repeat. I was like, so I've got it paused up there. But yeah, I could sit there and just have it on that. So you're really going to get a gauge for it. And of course, now, what do we tell everybody? And I'd say this to Lucasfilm, like, don't read the comments. Don't read the comments. Don't read the comments.
Yeah.
But someone's going to be reading the comments that they don't care about the feelings. Like, all right, we're going to take an intern. You go read the comments, and if there's anything good, you let us know. So it doesn't make us feel bad. But yeah, it was like funny. And then thinking about all the different elements, like even on the way home, it's like, hey, by the way, Martin Scorsese, voiced this. And I was like, wow, we're going to be parsing over this. I know that, my emails were full of like, hey, we're going to discuss this, and the invites were flowing. But yeah, it's now to come think about it, you go like, oh, I get it, and that's why I think it's so important to look back and go, look, I think the feelings were valid. I think the questions were valid. But I think when we went through that conversation, I think we kind of worked it out in a way that, not a lot of people maybe have done. They just kind of they fired off their hot take comment and then went on about their day and got their Dunkin' coffee and went there. But it was nice to go through this, and it was also nice to kind of come back and go, all right, now we've got this. We got the full story. Let's dive into it.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. Let's dive into this here. So I've already listed off a few of the things that are within the 2+ minute trailer here. What stood out to you upon first watch, or even subsequent watches now that it's been released to the world for about 12 hours now?
One of my favorite elements. Now, I loved the twins from Book of Boba Fett. It was one of
me too.
One of my favorite, besides Chrysanthemum. There was a lot of good things in there, but I thought the twins were a piece that was really like, I want to learn more. I loved seeing the twins. Now, I didn't realize that was Embo. At first, my head goes straight to, was it
Constable
Zuvio? Constable Zuvio, because I'm like, at some point he's got to show up somewhere again.
All those action figures will be valid again.
I got to get one of those. They got to be like $3. just to say, because now
Oh
it's
man,
one of
they're
the
probably like 10 cents now.
oh man, and everybody has those 10 malls. Well, we'll see. But I loved seeing it was a lot. I know Greg and I were kind of talking a little bit, going, like, was it too much, stuff that we recognize? Because
Hmm.
you see a variant of the storm of the snowtroopers, and the one creature that Martin Scorsese voices, which looks like Rio from Solo: A
Yes.
Star
Yep.
Wars
Yep.
Story.
The
Um,
Ardinian.
the Ardinian, thank you. You see a lot. You see Pedro Pascal's real head,
Yes, helmetless. You know.
helmetless, and you go, okay. And then you know, a lot of the one-liners, right? And you
Hmm.
kind of go, those are the kind of things that there was a lot of action in this, and yeah, it was really nice. But I think what you kind of felt is like, this doesn't feel like the volume. I think it's probably
Hmm.
going to be my
Okay.
key
Great.
first takeaway. This feels like we had money to spend. We went over to the ILM vending machine, and we said, we're this time we're going to get the $3 snack instead of the 75-cent snack. And
Yeah.
they went back for seconds.
They sure did. I like that. That's your brain's going with that there, right? Like this looks like it was for. It says at the end, forged for IMAX, right? And that's what they needed to accomplish with these trailers here, right? Is to like have enough that gets people out of their seats and fights that urge to say, well, it'll just be on Disney Plus in 45 days, and I need to go see this. I need to take the family out, pay $100 for a family of 4 to get the tickets and get the popcorn and whatnot, and then sit in this theater and then have a good time and watch this thing here, right? They needed to win that audience over. Now, I think they do that with this trailer here, and I think just because of the CG looks good, I will say, right? It looks like a vast improvement. The comments, forget the comments, right? Because there's always going to be a negative group out there that are like, this just looks like a TV or CGI bad and whatnot. Like that's given for everything that exists these days. Unobjectively, or maybe objectively, I don't know. I'm just saying here, as a fan, I know I'm a fan of this stuff, but I will also point out when I recognize, like, hey, that's not necessarily the best looking kind of thing out there. Um,
Right.
this does look good though, and that's my personal take on it, and that's not just looking through the rose tinted glasses of saying like, oh, I just want to see a Star Wars and appreciate it and whatnot. The creatures look good, the action looks great. It doesn't have that kind of feeling that people have received over the last perhaps 4 or 5 years, once we kind of learned too much about the volume perhaps, and people are starting to be like, all right, that's where the wall starts kind of deal, and then they're like, I know where the horizon's at, I know what's real and what's not, and we're starting to like try and figure that out, even though I will argue that people are mostly wrong when it comes to that. And I have the evidence to prove that. That's a whole other podcast discussion on that front there. But this definitely shows that this is a scope and a scale bigger than what your TV, your phone, your iPad, your computer screen is going to warrant for this thing. This needs the bigger aspect ratio to be seen, and you need the good sound system too to match that as well. So to see all these explosions, these action bits, the whole gladiator sequence with a hut, right? Like that is all on display in this trailer here, and I think that's exactly the point to take away from it there too. But I do want to dive into. So we saw helmetless Pedro. Pedro's going to be in this. I mean, he's in this regardless, be the voice, but actual Pedro is in the suit again. We haven't seen it for a couple seasons now. Um, what was your first take when you saw that, and what do you think it has for the implications of the movie, knowing that like he resolved that, like he, and in Mando season 3, right, we know he was redeemed of sorts by going into the waters of Mandalore because he took his helmet off, and now his helmet's getting taken off again. What's that? Do we have to go back every time now? Once this happens again, like how are we gonna walk through this path again?
Maybe you just get like some bottled water from the mines, and you
Yeah,
can
you
just,
should have just doused himself off with it. Yeah.
he is an incredible asset to your production. And I think no matter what, if you have to come up with a story about it, there's no sense of bringing him in and keeping him under the helmet the entire time.
Hmm.
He can, now the percentage is up, but I think it's important to show audiences, and especially not, this is one where, you kind of see the Razor Crest or a crest
A
and a
Razor
helmet,
Crest, yes.
a Razor Crest, Grogu pushing buttons in a Razor Crest or a crest, and a helmetless Mando, and you go, all right, how are we going to do this? And so that's kind of nice because I think we talked about, like what new ground could they cover here, but you go, okay, there's going to have to be something worked around there
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
relationship to the story. Grogu's gonna Grogu, but
Yeah.
this could be interesting. But I think it's a good reset. It kind of reminded me a little bit of when we saw Deadpool and Wolverine, where it was kind of a little bit of a there was elements of the Loki series in there, but not too much that you got bogged down in it, but you kind of got an idea. And so that's where I kind of go into this going, okay,
Yeah.
it doesn't take a stretch to me that there's more than one type of that old vehicle. And I think maybe seeing the paint job on it goes, that may not be the right, that may not be, and that would be great if it was another one. Even it was like, hey, we got you another ship, just like the one you had, and you're like, and that might be what he might say to Sigourney Weaver's character, just saying like, look, if you're wanting me to do this, I'm going to need something more than my
Yeah.
than
Something a
my
little more
hot
heavy
rod.
duty.
Yeah, than my Mazda
I gotta take
Miata.
the van.
I got to take the van. There we go. And that may also be why we're seeing it not necessarily work as well, because that might be something where it's like, hey, we found this and we kind of got it up, but it's not quite there. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, that might
Yeah.
give it a little more character then. But it's one of those where it's like, when I saw like the twins and the gladiator, you go, okay, we're gonna get some down and dirty here, and I kind of like that
Mm-hmm.
because just like we saw with Maul, Shadow Lord, all right, this might be a little bit of a dive because we're gonna need, they're gonna be playing some hits, but I want a couple of new tunes, and this might be the ticket because you can't really go wrong with Huts, right? We knew Rada the
Yeah.
Hutt was gonna be in this,
Yeah.
but you can't really go wrong with throwing Huts and Embo and all the bounty hunters in here.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a slam dunk, and you could get a little dark maybe.
I think so too. And I'm curious what because this is somewhat giving us a sense into the narrative of this story, right? It seems like there is this like Sabak set playing set of of like most wanted criminals and ex Imperials that are out in the galaxy, right? And they're using these to kind of like hunt down the most wanted out in the galaxy and then bring them to justice, theoretically, right? This is the new Republic government trying to solidify itself as the main being in the galaxy, and you just can't have these warlords out there, whether they're gangsters or ex-Imperials, trying to maintain pockets of the galaxy under their own rule. um, Now, I'm curious, do you think that it's going to be interwoven between gangsters hunting for gangsters and like this empire storyline? Or do you perhaps think that we're going to have like the first act be you know an empire story, or hunt the Huts, perhaps the gangsters, I'm just going to phrase them as, and then vice switch to the second and third act being this like larger kind of, does this emulate perhaps the Return of the Jedi kind of storyline where, okay, we have the Huts and the whole Tatooine sequence, it's like 45 minutes, and then the next hour 45 is it's almost like two movies in Return of the Jedi because of that. Is that going to kind of, what do you think, be a similar way how they're going to approach this film based off of this trailer? Because we know that there's that whole perhaps it's Hoth or whatever sequence that is with the AT-ATs that was the garbled up footage that we all have seen from Celebration, but we know that's coming, and you got to think that this is going to tie into larger elements of the Star Wars story that's right now, whether it be Ahsoka season 2, or a Skeleton Crew season 2, perhaps, that I've seen maybe floating out there, or that aforementioned Dave Filoni combination film of all these things colliding into one big Heir to the Empire prep storyline. Where do your thoughts go on that one?
Oh man, I tell you, you're going everywhere. But I do think that you're onto something, and I do think that after seeing this trailer and seeing how they're kind of leaning into, you know, the Imperial remnants, and the Hoth thing,
Mhm.
I, but with still the universe of Mando, I think there is definitely a lot of ground for them to play in without him having to, face Thrawn or something.
Yeah.
So I do think that he can kind of within his own sphere, and I think we proved that over the course of a lot of these Disney Plus series is that, we've clearly said that the Republic was on shaky ground. And of
Mm-hmm.
course,
Mm-hmm.
by the time, because there's what, 30 years between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens.
Yep.
So there's a lot of fertile ground. There's a lot to play in. You can let Ahsoka season 2 carry a lot of that canon water for you.
Yep.
You can give Mando the big set pieces, but then allow Ahsoka and Sabine to continue to play out there and, find Balin Skull V2, as well as getting ready. But it starts to kind of make me real excited for, as we get past Starfighter. Hey, I think this gives a little more credence to a Filoni movie
Mm-hmm.
that could be something along the lines of, I'd love to see them do an Heir to the Empire type. Doesn't have to be
Yeah.
pound for pound, and they may be trying to figure out how would we capture that essence if we didn't necessarily maybe have a Luke, or we didn't have to
Mm-hmm.
recast Luke, but we could use some of our existing characters to kind of act out like maybe Ahsoka is the proxy for Luke in sort of an Heir to the Empire, without the really cringy Shizor Leia stuff. No, sorry, that's Shadows of the Empire. I
Yeah,
am
it is Shadows,
losing
yeah.
it. But you could also include some of that in there. Hey, why not? No, that's not. It's I take that back immediately. It's different. See, even me, I'm completely lost. But I think there's enough in this to let him go through some crazy set pieces. Let Ahsoka do, get down and dirty in it with some of the canon, and then have a movie that kind of ties in. Maybe it goes as a direct sequel in some cases to this, because we have Zeb and we have some of the other,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but then you don't have to really sit there and explain stuff. So now you start to think, how is this movie gonna end, and where are we going next?
Those are the big questions, right? And I think if there's going to be a next, right, this film needs to succeed, right? So that's why I'm a little thrilled now in hindsight that the marketing did what it did. 'Cause I think they set themselves up for the best case possible, knowing that this is their return to cinemas for Star Wars, and
Mhm.
they need to get all the eyes in front of it possible and please both audiences and make sure we don't alienate one group, but also say, hey, there's a whole lot of Easter eggs and fun stuff for the folks that really have invested a lot of time into this story. So we're all set, we're all fed across the board here. And if this, because honestly, if this doesn't succeed, right, I don't know if we get that Filoni film in the theaters. Maybe
Exactly.
that's just a straight to Disney Plus series and it gets half the budget perhaps that this gets. So if we want to see that kind of big climactic story event in the way that's probably intended to be seen, then this has to succeed first. And who knows where we go if this actually succeeds, right? Because Marvel's tested those waters a little bit there with some shows and movies, bringing those characters to the big screen, and it hasn't succeeded in the way, but that might be for a whole different reason here. So this is their real testing ground here, is like, hey, can we take arguably the biggest Disney Plus property since we launched and put it on the big screen and see if that happens here. Now, I think the question, there's a outlier question here too, which is like, if hopefully this thing is successful and people see it on the big screen and people love it. Can the Mando ever go back for a season 4? Can they ever just do an 8 episodes? Because will people be like, hey, expecting big screen spectacle, I need, like, the budget's all in a 2-hour movie versus spread out over roughly 40-minute episodes over the course of a couple of weeks there, right? I wonder, like, that's a big difference in terms of quality perhaps, but I think like they've done such a good job with the volume and it keeps continuing to do well. Or will they just say, hey, let's just keep doing a sequel? Mando season 5 is now on on the big screen. Mando season 6 leading up to this big movie here. I think there's just a lot at play here when it comes to this in general here. So do you have any thoughts about that, Greg?
I like the fact that Mando graduated to the big screen.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with them staying on the big screen, because I think that goes back to where, I loved Ted Lasso
Mm-hmm.
season 1, Chef's Kiss. It's been hard for me to go back into season 2 and beyond, even though I know they're great. And I've kind of like picked it off, a little bit here and there. but you're like, oh, it's hard to kind of go back. And you're like, I liked where Mando season 3 ended up, as much as there were,
Hmm.
issues along the way, and I get it, and some of that was their fault, and some of it wasn't their fault. Um, but I'd be really happy to go. You know what? I think it's going to probably be based off of not only the box office for this, but something else. And I'm going to ask you later as far, and I want you to think about this, is like, what does this movie have to do to get you back in the theater the second and third time?
Hmm. Hmm.
But I do think that because they don't have to, I mean, what would a season really want of Mando need him to do? I think we've
Yeah.
taken kind of as far as that arc, other than he goes back and does it again, or he does this again. Why not have him, hey, we're going to call up the big guns and, call you back in and do that. It's almost like, yeah, so, so we could have a Mando and Grogu too, which is what I think if
Hmm.
we're
Hmm.
there, why not? And that might be what the Filoni movie may end up being in some cases.
Yeah.
But my question to you is, what's it going to take? What's it going to take for this not to be like a one and done theater? Everybody go sees it. Everybody
Hmm.
posts like me. I'm like,
Hmm.
hey, I'm here seeing it. But what's it going to take this movie to do to get you back multiple times, which is what I think is going to get them to where they need to be for this movie to really be successful. A long, long, like multi going, experience.
Yeah, I think the spectacle's going to need to be there. So the action's going to need to be better than the TV show, which I think the trailer is showing that's going to be that way. And the CG needs to be better than
Hmm.
what the TV show has done. Not that it's been bad, I would say, on the TV show, but it needs to be that like cinema level quality. I'm thinking like, think of the great films of the last 20 years that have really good CG, and then add the Mandalorian and Grogu to that list and be like, yep,
Right.
we're on there, right? Don't be on the list of like the ones that you're like, it looks rubbery. Uh, I can tell someone made this with like 2 minutes to go before they needed to submit it, and then they were overworked on overtime. That kind of thing needs to be subsided, right? And then ultimately for the story, I need to be left wanting more, right? So
Hmm.
whatever those last 10 minutes of this movie are, there needs to be some big revelations that said, all right, this was worth it coming into this theater, right? Basically, Mando season 2 it, right? That those last 10 minutes there where Luke Skywalker comes in triumphantly and heroically, right? And then Grogu goes with him, right? And you're like, well, where do we go next? I don't know. But you want to
Hmm.
rewatch it because you're like, I want to be a part of this moment again. Give us that zeitgeist thing. Give us some incredible cliffhanger by which that says, all right, we know there are more stories coming down the pipeline. We don't know exactly where, how, or what, right? We're getting them. But the Mando story probably doesn't end here. And what's the next step for them? Because we got that, the bow tied on top for the show itself, right? Mando's sitting on the porch with Grogu. So like you said, if you want to stop watching right there, you can, but this is almost like a relaunch of the show and series moving forward here and relaunching it on the big screen. So it's basically like, all right, here's a new trilogy starting up for us right now. And what's going to be at the end of this episode 4 here, that's going to say, all right, we're heading on into the next thing. Make sure you watch Ahsoka season 2 because this is definitely going to tie into that and give you some answer here. So when Mando and Grogu 2 comes out in theaters in 3 years, right? You have a very good reason to get back in the cinemas and then say, all right, where is this going to take me after that then there. So it's really, what do those last 10 minutes do for me?
And also, it's like, Mando and Grogu have become your heavy hitter. They're like, not to go back to sports ball for a long time, but I'm like, they are your big power hitter. They're your cleanup
Hmm.
hitter. So like you've got this home run star. Where do we put them in the lineup? And at this point, if Mando and Grogu can really bring him into the box office, so let's just make that is what's going to need to happen.
Yep, exactly.
The Disney wants to see a theater success because that is just a mechanism to print money. And of course, if you have the full faith and credit of ILM behind this, that as I've been watching Light and Magic on repeat, seemingly forever.
As you should.
You've got everything you need. You have some of the best houses to do your effects. But think about this, like if this does well, that sets up Starfighter, like
Yes, that's right.
this
Starfighter's around the
we get a
corner. Oh my
good
gosh.
theater experience, multiple viewings, it's on everywhere, people are loving it. Great start. Next year, hey, we got something new. You ain't seen none of this before, but now people are going, I want to go back to the
Yep.
theater because I
Yep.
want that experience again. And I saved up money. I still had a little bit of money left over from Celebration to afford whatever the heck popcorn bucket you're going to throw out there. I'm just going to just clinch and take it. Just give it, just take it.
Just put the
It's a
credit
bad
card
decision,
down.
but I'm going to
Yep.
buy it. But that's what I want. That's what they need. That's what I want. I want a reason to go back in. It's kind of funny because even my mother, who we kind of introduced, I showed her a little bit of the Mandalorian and Grogu season one. It's
Hmm.
Mandalorian season one. She really liked it. She didn't see very much, but she liked it, and she was watching the trailer. She was in the background watching the trailer. I'm like, would you like to go? She's like, yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing it. I'm like,
Oh, see, there's the
that's what's
audience.
going to take. She didn't have to know anything else about Star Wars, although she was reading the Star Wars radio drama book that
Oh, fun.
John Tenuto wrote. And then I think that brand new book, the what's the has the three directors on it. Has this
Oh, the
Spielberg.
one that just came out like yesterday. The Spielberg, the Last Kings of Hollywood, I think is what it's called. Yep, Spielberg,
Uh,
Lucas, and Coppola.
I think that's going to be next on her reading list because I've been, in addition to all the other mysteries and stuff she likes to read, I've been throwing her. I think right now she's reading a Steve Jobs book.
Oh,
So
nice.
just to kind of expand the universe a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about taking my 84-year-old mom to see this because I'm like, what's not to love? It's a spectacle. She's already she just knows cursory, like, oh, I know who that is. I
That's
know who the
right.
guy with the helmet is. I know who the little puppet is. And then, and then whoever else in my family that I'll drag, because I will see it multiple times, but give me an excuse to go back even more
Hmm.
times than
Hmm.
I thought I was going to. Because it would be hard to go back and see it the average number of times I see a Star Wars film, if it's like, no, okay, no, that's cool. Like some of the Marvel stuff that you saw, and that maybe I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go back. So anyway, we want this to be a success. I want it to be something I really want to go back and see
Hmm.
multiple times. That I think is what's going to make this a winner.
Agreed. And my last thought for you here is, speaking of the Kings of Hollywood, right? We got a big name now in the Star Wars galaxy. Your co-host on the Breakfast Pack, Greg Cass, texted me this morning. Was that Martin Scorsese? And then I was like, oh, I didn't actually think about the voice. And then lo and behold, a couple minutes later, I got a text from him again. That was a screenshot from Lucasfilm being like, yep, that was Martin Scorsese. Welcome to Star Wars.
Oh my god!
And so now, yeah, one of those kings of Hollywood is now officially in the Star Wars galaxy, or at least will be officially in the coming months here. What do you think of that pull? That sounds like a pretty big adventure to bring him into this crazy space opera.
I absolutely love it because one of my favorite commercials of all time, there was a Martin Scorsese, and I want to say it was an American Express ad he did, and this was years ago, where he comes in to pick up some photos that he'd shot of his, you know, nephew's birthday party, and he
Hmm.
goes picks them up and he goes through the stack of photos, and he hates all of them, and he sits there and he just kind of goes, two fours, to this, and he shows like, what do you think? And he shows it to the guy, and the guy goes, it's nice, and he gives him that look like you know nothing, and then he's like, to this, to this, and then he's like, unavoidable, got to reshoot, and he buys more film. And then on the way out after the tagline, he goes, hey Jimmy, you want to turn 10 again? And I was like, so he can bring it. He can
Hmm.
bring the
Yeah.
deadpan. He's done all this. I think it's a great little Easter egg that didn't have to happen. At first, I thought it was like, is that Favreau? Because I'm thinking Rio from
Hmm.
Solo.
Yep.
But then I'm like, oh, it's great. And why not? It's the same thing. Like
And we haven't
these
seen an
guys,
Arginian for a while too, so it's good to
exactly.
see one again.
And I think it's fun, and I think it's a level of detail that you go, these guys are really thinking about this, and nothing is going to be throwaway. This is going to be one of those that, once again, I want to go to multiple viewings of this. I want to sit there and go, all right, today I'm going to look for X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's funny that I was looking at, as an aside, so I've been collecting a lot of the Star Wars weeklies from the UK. I'm going to be doing a show on it at some point because I just can't stop talking about it. But there was a Thai, there's like a Thai troop transport that looks like a Thai bomber, but it isn't. But it's based
Got
off
it.
of the Thai bomber. I think was a ship. They did some ship concept drawings for A New Hope that they didn't use, but they show up in the comic books. And what I never really caught until someone pointed that out was when Captain Nita goes to the Superstar Destroyer to apologize and die in front of Darth Vader. He is in one with inverted Thai wings.
Yeah.
And it's something that Mark Newbold, when he was on, when we had him on last weekend, it's out right now. I'm like, I had no idea. And then I had to go look. And so what's not to love about going back to a movie that I've seen a million times from 1980 and finding something new, and you go, that's what I love about Star Wars. I love that I can see something new, or you go, hey, you know what? This ship design doesn't show up until Empire Strikes Back. What is it doing in a comic book from 1979 or 1978? That's awesome. I didn't know about this. Now I want to go read, and it's just so great. I want to go back and see this movie lots of times, looking for stuff and finding out great little tidbits, like Martin freaking Scorsese does a voice cameo in this. And I'm like, what else? What are they holding back? You know, we've already seen Steve
right.
Bloom as Zeb
And Embo.
and Embo. Oh my gosh. Could Constable Zuvio be in this film?
That's right.
It's
He's the one
still
in the last 5
possible.
minutes that's going to appear. And
Yes,
it's
we
gonna
know
be
because
like-
we're recording this in February and the movie's not out till May, that this, at least part of this podcast, is still evergreen. And to that point, Constable Zuvio still could show up in this movie.
You know, when you inevitably get like the people that get to see the film earlier, right? Whether it's like a screener or press show or something like that, the premiere, and then you get those people inevitably that do the clickbait article of like, you're not ready, or the social media reaction of you're not ready for this. The real you're not ready for this is Constable Zuvio popping up at the end of this thing going, did you miss me?
Oh my gosh. That would be great. You know, but one of the lines I really did love hearing that is when Mando he's going to live centuries longer than I am. I thought that, and I was like, that was a nice little deep cut going, he gets it. And I'm like, and they're not afraid to go, it's a very creative way to kind of throw some can out there going, this is a creature that lives. You know, we all know, maybe we know Yoda, maybe some people never really dawn on them. Like,
I mean, I was going to say, how does he know, right? Like, how does he know the species is going to live here? So, like, brings up an interesting question that the film might pose or answer for us at least.
So at this point, yeah, although some of the quotes I know from Mando on it kind of sounded a little like, one-liney.
Yeah, give me your one-liner. Ha 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 ha.
Or that
goes
last.
where I go.
Exactly. Of course, that last line when it's about like, we'll save it until after dinner or something like that. I'm like, if you don't think that's going in a breakfast pack intro, you've got another thing coming, folks. As soon as I can get some time to edit that bad boy in, yeah, it's going in the breakfast pack. Yeah, that's thank you for making anything about food. But I don't know. I think I'm very more happy that this is out. I'm feeling a lot better. We can go back. We've talked, a lot of us have talked at great length on podcasts about how we're concerned about this movie. I'm a little less concerned at this point because I go, okay, and now I've kind of, now I can kind of go back and watch this again. I don't know if it's a good question. I don't know if I really want another trailer.
Yeah,
Yes,
I think I'm
want
set.
it.
But
yes, I want it. But
you're going to get
I
the
think
TV spots at least, which are going to be
Right.
really spoilery towards the release date. So that's the question: do you watch those? I don't personally.
I think that this. I think if they released the grainy footage, so we can have a nice high quality one of that, so I can put those two together and be happy with what I saw, because I think I've seen enough stuff that I recognize, some stuff that I go, ooh, okay, that's cool. And, I think at this point, I don't want to see any more Zeb, because I just want to just enjoy and soak it up. You see a little more Embo. Yeah, let's do it. And then, yeah, just gimme with the twins and some of that. And then the Gladiator stuff is going to be the icing on the cake for that. So let's get Rada. We haven't really seen, I don't know if we saw Rada in the snuck footage. Did we?
Just the back, I think.
Okay.
So and then that was like, is that who we think it is? Because we didn't know, right? He was just going
Mhm.
rah in that footage, and then that's what we've seen in the last trailer too. So this is like actually seeing him actually be buff and muscular and whatnot. We just saw those
Yeah,
back muscles and assumed.
yeah, here's what I wanna see. I wanna see now in Book of Boba Fett when the twins were being carried in, I think they had, like, some drummers,
They
you
did,
know, like,
yes.
the
Some bass drummers
and
coming around, yeah. Dun,
and that
dun.
became one of the cheapest autographs in that top set. Um, that guy needs to make an appearance again. That would bring that card up from, like, $5 to 5.25. But I think I wanna see the Hut, drummer boy again, because I think, like, all right, that would be an even deeper cut. I'd be like, "Okay, I'm gonna go out and, rainbow that card now." But no.
That's right. Save it for it'll pay off the kids' college fund.
Exactly.
Well, Greg, this has been a fantastic examination of this new trailer here. I think we're both really excited for this film coming out, and it's nice that we're just living in this era of some positivity coming out of that Super Bowl and having to process. There's nothing really to process now, and we're looking steep. We're looking forward and ahead towards May, and we're excited for all of it here. And then we got the best part, we got Maul in between, and
Oh,
who
yes.
else, who knows what else comes out in the next couple of weeks too, leading up to this thing that's going to be really cool. But where can the folks find you if they didn't listen to the episode from 3 days ago to hear about where they can find you online? If they missed that, perhaps where can they find you online, and what's the cool stuff you got going on over at the Rebel Base Card?
Oh, I was very fortunate enough to sit down with Mark Newbold of Fantha Tracks and Star Wars Insider currently um, over the weekend, and we kind of did a nice. I wouldn't say postpartum because Insider's still going on for
Hmm.
another couple issues.
For like two more.
Yeah, there's two more, and so we talked about his time with some of the articles and kind of talking about the impact of Star Wars Insider and all that, and of course we talked about a bunch of other stuff. It's a long episode, but I'm telling you, he brings the goods, and a lot of times I love listening back to those episodes myself because I'm just like it's like a making tracks
Hmm.
on steroids. It's just amazing, and I had a lot of fun. I know I've got some other shows that are coming up. I know that I talked to Greg Cass, and so we'll do another discussion on this trailer, and it's fun because in between now and then I can
Yeah,
listen to it
more
like a lot of other
processing and
podcasts.
whatnot. Yeah.
Exactly, because someone is going to pick up on stuff that we didn't get a chance to talk to or that we didn't
Hmm.
see, and so that is what's going to help even enhance this trailer even more. I think I have Ian Taylor of That Card Collectors podcast, formerly Marvel Card Collectors, and I think we'll probably be talking about cards and collecting. But don't skip on that one. Ian also brings the good. He and I go back a while, so that should be a lot of fun, and of course a lot of more coming up. We still have Second Breakfast, and you can find us over at Rebel Base Card on nearly all socials, or if you go on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, just look for the Rebel Base Card podcast, and I'll definitely, if nothing else, help you go back to sleep.
Well, I do have a question. Are you going to finish Second Breakfast before Mall starts?
No, no, no. I think how Second Breakfast is going, it's almost like a monthly thing,
Hmm.
maybe one or two a month. I like it because it allows the schedule's a little easier to work around, and it's a nice deep dive. And that way, someone like, for example, if we were doing like, hey, we're going to do a deep dive and we're going to do it consecutively for like, 10 weeks or whatever, it's a lot for folks to kind of go through. But I think if you kind of go, hey, yeah, we're going to do Andor, season 2, episode blah, then I'd be, oh, then that, even if you hadn't gone back and rewatched it, it's a fun discussion. And
Hmm.
it's also like with everything else going on, it's kind of a nice thing to have there. But
Yeah,
it
nice
does kind of
distraction.
give us a little bit of a blueprint to see if we ever want to do another show after that. And the guests have been fantastic. And I know we have, I think the next one on deck is, I think, episode 5. I think I'll be releasing that before probably the end of February. So look for that to come in the feed as well. So it's kind of nice because that way it's just content we can have all year round, and it gives us a chance to explore just like what you've done, when you did your sort
Hmm.
of like your
Hmm.
Spielberg kind of subset. It gives you a chance to kind of like break out and try something else, and it's fun, and it's great for your audience, and it's been fun because that way I can come over here sometimes and we can play in your sandbox, and it's really great.
That's right. And folks, now that Martin Scorsese is going to be officially in the Star Wars family, that means we can do a Scorsese season here.
I love it. I love it. I am down for it. Go everything from Mean Streets to anyway.
Yeah, Taxi Driver. Get the Marsha Lucas in there, who edited that film. Goodfellas.
That's a nice cut. I like that. I didn't know that.
Exactly. Yep.
See?
For sure. Yeah, she was working on that, and then got pulled away to do Star Wars. Some help with that too. So yeah, she I think she might have done a few of the Scorsese films, but could be wrong on there. Don't quote me on that, folks. But yeah, Raging Bull and King of Comedy, and all that great stuff. Departed. A lot of good stuff in that guy's history. Also, folks, if you're interested, Apple TV has a great documentary on Scorsese and his life, and really interesting guy, frankly. So if you want, kind of that light and magic look at a one person that doesn't hold back its punches, then that Scorsese doc is really, really something special too. So go check that out. And folks, thank you for listening to this midweek episode here, this breaking news episode of Force Ghost Conversations here. Thank you for listening. Of course, we'll be back in your podcast feeds for our regular episode on Sunday, and I'll spoil it for you all here. We're going to talk that Revenge of the Sith deluxe edition novelization that came out this past year in honor of the 20th anniversary of both Revenge of the Sith, the film, and the 20th anniversary of the novel. And we've got Carl from the Wampa's Lair on to discuss that. So you're in for a real treat with that episode there. So be on the lookout for that one in your feeds. And of course, we're available on all the places that you can find podcasts these days. And we'd love to continue the conversation with you all. Also, X, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Threads, Blue Sky. We're there. Force Ghost Conversations. Check us out. We'll continue the conversation with you on those platforms. And until next time, may the Force be with you. Take care.
Thank you.